Welcome to Restaurants Reinvented, the podcast for restaurant executives where we go beyond the four walls of the store and talk about industry, trends, strategies, and challenges that the C-suite tackles every day. Your host is Jen Kern, a career marketer across multiple industries and the CMO of QBeyond. Now let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Restaurants Reinvented. This is Jen Kern. I'm the hostess here on the show, and I'm really excited today to be talking to Phil Crawford, the CTO at CKE Restaurants. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Thanks, Jen. Great to be here.
So excited to have you here. Like I was saying,
too.
I feel like, first of all, I've been in the industry 4 years now. I feel like your name has been one of the names I've always heard about whenever the topic of technology, enterprise, QSR restaurants comes up. So I'm very honored that you're joining me today. Yeah.
I'm either infamous or famous, right? Whichever we want to look at it.
Both.
Both. Great.
I'm going to go with both.
I love it.
And I know you've been on a lot of podcasts and you're on the network. You were at the Olo event last week and you're going to be probably at Murtech, I'm sure, next week. And
yes,
hopefully we'll see you at RLC.
I'll be at RLC.
Yeah,
so
there you go. So
I'll be everywhere. Life of a rock star, I guess, right?
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Oh, it's fun. It's
No,
nice
just
when we
kidding.
can.
It's fun. I love it. Especially after all the years we were gone with COVID. Couldn't go anywhere.
Right. No kidding. I love traveling too.
So do I.
Awesome stuff. Well, I don't think we need to give a background. Like I said, I think everyone knows who you are, although I'll give a quick background, which is that you, like me, got bit by the hospitality bug, right? You started at Darden and Yard House, and then I think you were at Shake Shack.
Correct.
And then you jumped out and went over to Godiva, which is what I love. And you tried your chops there over at retail. And I'm sure you learned a ton. Mm-hmm. And then you came back to our beloved restaurant industry, and you're now the CTO at CKE. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah, it is.
CTO at CKE, which
Say
obviously, we all know that's Hardee's and Carl's Jr. And a very infamous brand, an old brand, but with a cult following. I know that.
Yes.
So there you go. Anything you want to add?
No,
I just put the last 30 years of your life in 2 sentences.
You did it very well. Like I grew up in this industry. Sure. I got bit by the bug when I was 16. The irony, which a lot of people don't know, little fun fact, my first job when I was 16 was at Carl's Jr. in California.
Oh, stop it.
No, and mic drop right there.
Cool.
So I've come literally full circle. So it's quite the amazing journey. I've been blessed and honored to work for some amazing leaders and did some amazing concepts. And you're right, I did miss the industry for 2 years, but the knowledge I got from traveling worldwide and dealing with the supply chain and manufacturing Godiva really was that other part of my career and quite call it personal curriculum I didn't have. So, but the bug's in me. Either you love this industry or hate it. There's no in between. And I have such a love and passion for it. And it's given me so much. My next part of my journey is to start giving back. So that's why I do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Love that. So 16, were you flipping burgers? Were you a cashier?
All the above, let's just say. Back then I was a fully cross-trained employee.
Okay.
After school, go there. And back then they had salad bars at Carl's Jr. So those
I remember
Carl's Jr. franchisees and those that love it back then. But yeah, every part of the station, drive-thru to cashier to, being sometimes a janitor. You got to do all parts of it. I think that really kind of formed who I am and an understanding of the industry is there's only one part of the cog and everybody has to chip in and do everything about it and equally. And you're never too high or too above, right? To go take out the trash, because we all did it at one time of our life. So, and it's kind of just part of a mantra to stay with me all the way through.
Or wash the dishes. That's what I was doing at 16.
Or wash the dishes.
I was a bus girl, and they used to pull me back and be like, "Hey, we need you to dishes." I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to get my little outfit dirty, but okay."
Yes, exactly.
Well, awesome. Well, again, I'm really excited to have you here. I started this series about 6 months ago called CTO Trailblazers. Ooh. So I've been on the prowl, on my own little trailblazing prowl, looking for really leading innovative CTOs that can help educate and inform our audience about 2023 and what's in store and what's going on and what are some trends. We just released our very, very small shameless plug. We just released our 4th annual State of Digital, which looks at all the trends across, and you took it actually. So you'll get your report any day now. But it
Excellent.
looks across the trends at QSRs and fast casuals. And one of the big things that's really been jumping out to me, and we talk about it a lot in the space, is efficiency. And what
Yeah.
does efficiency mean in 2023? Like we can look at, we'll talk about some of the future stuff, the future of restaurants, a connected restaurant, all that stuff. But this year, I mean, there's so many
Mhm.
challenges, like just sitting right there. I mean, this inflationary environment, controlling prices, and then most restaurant operators have a pretty unwieldy tech stack. It's like the Jenga blocks, right? And so what I wanted to
I like
start out
that.
asking you is, in terms of efficiency,
Yeah.
how are you harnessing technology better this year? Or how are you just harnessing
Yeah.
technology, and maybe it's automation too, data,
Yeah.
to drive efficiencies?
Automation. That's another shameless plug. I have an event coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm on that panel, but we won't talk about that.
Oh, good. No. Tell us.
We
Tell
will.
us.
So I'll talk. And after the
Okay.
first question. So
Okay.
look, I think technology always needs to be the enabler for the business. It can never
Mhm.
be the hindrance.
Yeah.
So we look at it as really that catalyst for change, right? There's so many untapped areas when it's inside the four walls and outside the four walls of the business that we can leverage a technology stack to become more efficient, whether it be through artificial intelligence in store or outside of store, right? Whether it be in optimizing shifts through proper labor management, optimizing supply chain through order efficiency, right? Bringing in IoT inside the four walls to really understand how often should you change oil, right? Or monitor machines and so forth. I think efficiency is top of mind for us because you hit the two things on the head that's really plaguing the industry right now. Quite frankly, a lot of industries is the inflationary environment, but also the labor. So we have to capitalize and monetize as much as we possibly can based on those two factors. And if we don't, it really hurts the bottom line because we're already working on razor thin margins anyways with those
Right.
two catalysts and change. So we really have to kind of control what we can control on the bottom line. And the efficiencies also helps the employee morale, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to be stuck in twiddling thumbs and not doing anything. At the vice versa, you don't want them because you're blowing the labor cost. So having that fine line and the balance between the two inside the four walls, and actually every aspect comes down to better processes and procedures, which leads to better efficiency. So the technology side of us really is heavily focused on that, is how can we make the best out of our employees, right? Maximize their effort in order to gain the highest level of efficiency that translates to bottom line profits, quite frankly. And also, just the shameless plug, also gets for more folks to come back to Crawford and Hardee to enjoy their experience, right? Because that's what this is about. You want to be able to capitalize on all these different things.
Yeah. Well, you said the $500,000 word, which is AI,
Yeah.
right? You just dropped that in there.
No, I didn't.
And I do want to unpack that a little bit because, with this advent of Chat GPT and AI, and one of the findings in our survey was 70% of operators said that they are pursuing AI this year. And that's a massive jump from the survey the year before, which was closer to 15%. So I think people in earnest are looking at AI, and I think there's a little bit of a fear factor that comes with AI, and particularly if you start talking about like robotics type things, like, are we looking to replace people? And, you mentioned labor too. And it's like, well, I mean, there's just not people like applying for these jobs that we can hire. So we want to look at a little AI, but tell me how you're really using AI or how you plan to use AI this year.
Yeah. So, AI is a big word. There's a lot of things that are underneath AI. You mentioned Chat GPT. So we're looking at leveraging AI in two facets. First and foremost, I mentioned it inside the restaurant at the drive-thru. We've got it deployed in about 30 restaurants right now, both corporate and franchisee. You pull up into a Carl's or Hardee's in certain markets where it's been tested, and you're actually talking to a machine using natural language processing or NLP, right? It takes your order. It's consistent. It always does the upsells. It injects the order into the point of sale. And the beauty part about it is you have a high level of accuracy, over 90% accurate going into the point of sale system through direct integration. But it also then benefits the consumer because they can see the accuracy. There's less of an issue with language barriers because the models have gotten so well. Think when you talk about your own home devices, how well they understand you, although they're always listening, as we all know. And then vice versa for the employees, they get away from some of the most mundane tasks, which is talking to folks through drive-thru. Right? How often you're going through a drive-thru, you get somebody that might be having a bad day. We all have them. Right? This delivers a consistent message, and it really allows the employee to focus on what they do best, which is make the product, right? And meet and greet people at the drive-thru window. So that's one way we're leveraging AI, and we're seeing some amazing returns on that. The other side of it is really looking at the AI machine learning on the back end through our new instances of Snowflake and other reporting solutions, so we can start building models and do proactive algorithms that take a lot of the human element, because we all know like quantum computing is out here and very prevalent now, can do and process a lot more information and come to amazing results if you train these models correctly. And both of that is using intelligence. And the crazy part is it's already in our lives in so many ways. Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Like it's in our day-to-day lives. It's in other industries rapidly around. It's in loyalty programs. Like it's all over. I think it's becoming the forefront because it's now expanding outside of our comfort zones of how it actually affects the hospitality side of our business. And it needs to complement the business. It can't, go in and there are solutions out there to talk about robotics that make burgers or make fries, right? But it actually it alienates, for lack of a better term, the human element that I think it needs to complement. So when we think about that very heavily when it comes to AI in our business, and again, how does it go back as a complement to the business? I think also important with artificial intelligence is we're at the early cusp of it inside of our business. I think there's a lot of leg room. So you're right, 70% at the OLO conference I was just at, they mentioned a lot of folks saying we're experimenting and looking at it. And where's it going? Like we're thinking about version 3 and 4 inside the 4 walls. What if you talked to a headset and said, go 86, fries? Heaven forbid, we have 86 fries at one of our restaurants. Bad analogy. Right? But it went through and it updated your digital menu board or it updated your point of sale system, right? Or artificial intelligence, which already out there now in different test markets through camera systems we use, identifies the consumer they're driving up, identifies their car, their face. I can get your reflection like, hey, I'm having a great day. You're smiling. You're all frowning. It's a bad day. I don't know. Like the inflections, like all that's real life stuff that can change the experience inside the restaurant. So looking at all those facets, albeit just in QSR, we still have to serve a great product, right? We still got to make sure that the guests are happy and satisfied. So it's a long answer to your question. Sorry. I'm very passionate about it.
Same here. It's so interesting.
It is.
And as soon as you started talking about the AI at the drive-thru, you knew where my brain went.
Where we go?
Can I customize the voice? Can I make it a female?
This is not a marketing
with a British accent. With a British accent, great.
You can actually do a lot of cool things. Obviously it has to be brand on. Welcome to Hardee's, welcome to Carl. But you're right. You can actually do different inflections of voice. Like I won't name the directional system you can use in your phone, where you can choose, to your point.
Yeah.
Name the person to do so. I'm sure there's some brands that do it that have very key distinct voice actors that do all their commercials and such. Yeah. I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be an amazing thing to do.
Yeah.
Whether or not you want to afford it, it kind of plays into the ROI model, but I think it's a great idea.
And right now, is it single language or you have multiple languages?
It's dual language.
It's dual language. Okay.
It's Spanish and English.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. So what technology are you using for that? As you can give a shout out there.
I can't actually give a shout out because they're all under NDAs. So I apologize. I can't do that. But there's 4, which is great. And they're widely known, which is awesome. Okay. And I think that, we're continuing to go down that path of which provider we can do for both concepts, right? Kind of almost like a vanilla flavor that exceeds our expectations, but also gives our franchisees and our corporate operators the best bang for their buck.
So you're doing a little bake-off.
Little bake-off. Yes. It's a good way to say it.
Yeah. And how many restaurants do you have it at right now?
30, give or take.
Okay.
And
go ahead. Sorry.
I said we're bringing some on and some off because our business isn't the same volume at every single location, and demographics and ergonomics and so on and so forth. So we want to put it in different models to see how it works, because there's some models, maybe AI isn't appropriate for the business. They don't have labor constraints. They're high AUVs, it actually would be a detriment to the business.
Yeah.
There's other areas where we're seeing massive, benefits to it. So we're trying to play and put it in the right markets. But again, we're also trying to put it in different dialects. The dialect in Southern California, which is totally different. Yeah. I'd love to go get a Cali stoked burger. What the heck is that? You say that in Nashville, they're going to say, I have no idea what that means. So you got to also play with the areas where it's going to go to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really neat. Well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's exciting. And drive-thru is so hot, obviously, right now. I mean, everyone's trying to figure out how to improve the drive-thru time and speeds. And you mentioned that you have some stats, which again, maybe you can't share, but you said you're already seeing some strong ROI. Is that around speed? Like
Yeah,
order time,
that I can
fulfillment
tell you.
time? Okay.
So, right, it's actually about speed, right?
Okay.
It's about upsells. So when we talk about
Okay.
upsells, upselling to a combo,
Yeah.
that's a big KPI for us.
Yeah.
Higher average checks, right?
Yeah.
And obviously the number of conversions. And the last but not least, it's from a technical standpoint, I look at is the order injection accuracy rate, right?
Yeah.
Is the technology working? That's first and foremost. Because if it doesn't pass the technology side of it, then never gets to the financial ROI side or the business ROI side. So
Yeah.
we have 6 born KPIs that we're measuring against. And our transformation office and our finance partners and our operation partners are now looking at that to say, okay, is it repeatable, right? And then can we expect those same KPIs throughout the entire chain, or which are higher valued than others? Because all 6 aren't equally weighed.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a big facet across the decision matrix.
Yeah. Well, that order accuracy, it's another one that came out in the survey, right?
Yeah.
We need to improve order accuracy for the off-prem guest.
Correct.
That's where it's really getting dinged the most. And so,
I believe it.
Yeah. So, wow. Thanks for sharing those 6 KPIs too.
No
That's really
worries.
good stuff. That's really good stuff. So let's kind of continue with this drive-through conversation and kitchen and this whole idea of unified fulfillment, which is another thing that's trending right now, if you will, which is how do we get the ordering and the kitchen on the same page? There's so many places where the chain can break.
Yeah.
Right. And you've got all these channels coming in, whether it's, your delivery or your branded, mobile and online ordering site, or you're simply in store making these orders, and they're all trying to funnel through your kitchen systems. And then you want to make these employees, like you said, more efficient. You want to use them for the best utilization. Is there anything there you're doing?
Yeah, there is. So we're always trying to optimize the amount of data streams we get in, right? So if we can control as much as we can control, whether we can see real-time dashboards into how the kitchen's performing, like by station, or if we can look into the point of sale systems at the store to see what's being rung in, if we can look at their ecosystem, third-party stuff coming in, we can get a better idea of the peaks and valleys of business inside of the 4 walls, either during immediate real time, or also then use that data to forecast out and start seeing trends and analysis so we can better understand how the business has those peaks and valleys. And then that transcends into like supply chain and other parts of the business for labor scheduling and for ordering. I think the best part about it is really, it's all about data interchange, right? It's about taking data sets and compiling them in a way that they become actionable. So we are experimenting with different solutions, whether it be real-time, again, reading of the kitchen systems to understand the capacity and the velocity, right, inside the 4 walls. But also, it's also futuristically looking at it so we can also see what's forthbound coming in. I think a lot of folks look at, and I'll use an example, I won't name the company, that when you open your phone and it says your order ready in 20 minutes, how often have you gone there and it's been running in 25 minutes or 30 minutes? I've got a bad product, right? I've also had a bad guest experience. So to narrow that area down, we got to get that just in time down. The only way that works is if I can also look at what's inbound, might be pre-queue before it ever hits the restaurant. So you have to take all those different facets into the calculation to get the most accurate information back, not only to the operators, but also the guests, if you're starting to do that as part of your business model, right? I think the kitchen operations efficiency really is a big play. I think if you take this to a next generation, I don't think anybody is really doing this yet. Trademark Phil Crawford. If you were to take all this data and analyze it in a real-time fashion, and if you're the guest, we will pull up your phone and say, hey, and this ties into a loyalty piece. You have 5 restaurants that are in, within a 5-10 mile radius. You can actually see the current wait times. You can actually pick, or if you pick a restaurant in the app or the web, or whatever, say, this other restaurant's only 1 mile out of your way, but the wait time's actually 15 minutes less. I could redirect you, or I could also then start redirecting patterns and traffic. Might be able to incentivize you to try a different restaurant that might be a little bit out of your way, but maybe you get $1 off your coffee. I don't know. There's different ways to start playing with this to really kind of hone the guest to get in the best possible experience. Yeah. But again, it goes back to understanding what data is inside the 4 walls, but also external coming into the 4 walls, right? Maybe we talk about delivery. Maybe there's a site that gets absolutely obliterated with delivery on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. What if we could actually real time talk back to the delivery providers and redirect their drivers based on velocity volumes, not just geolocation of the driver? So there's a lot of headroom where to go with this, right? But it all comes back to understanding how the data can be analyzed and then leveraged to make a more valued decision.
Yeah, and a lot of people talk about throttling, which I think can mean like so many different things
It
depending on the
does.
context of which it's being used. But the way you're talking about it in your trademark Phil Crawford way is that you're not just looking like the kitchen
Correct.
in its own with the capacity, what's coming in,
Y-
where it's coming. You're looking way beyond that at the whole geo area and thinking of all the different players, if you will, and all
mhm,
the different data sets
mhm.
that you could actually manipulate to make it work better for your business and for the consumer.
Yeah, I think throttling, right? You're right. It's again, it's a catchphrase. It's a
Yeah.
capacity management, right? Is
Yeah.
another example for what it is.
Yeah.
Like most systems you base, I can only take 15 orders every 5 minutes. That's your throttle, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can only do a throttle of average basket size or number of items in a basket,
Mm-hmm.
right? But how much are you losing by setting that throttle? You don't really know. There's really any kind of quantum metrics. You can kind of come back and say after the fact, hey, yeah, I've lost 2 orders, but what does that actually mean larger than that? You're not really sure. I think the fact that if you could have back to your machine learning, artificial intelligence, a real-time system calculate that demand
Mm-hmm.
based on an algorithm, maybe you don't even really need a true throttling mechanism in there, right?
Yeah.
And there's some restaurants that we know the unicorns out there,
Yeah.
right? They know how busy they're going to be regardless. It doesn't really
Right.
matter, but
Right.
the majority aren't set up that way. So throttling in some ways could be bad, just like make times, right? Just like wait times, that whole kind of just-in-time time management system or quantity solutions are where this is going to head longer term.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit on our pre-call. I'm just remembering because we were talking about how no one is really tying all that data together right now. I mean,
No.
all we're hearing about right now is data, right? Like you got to get your
Yeah.
hands around the data, you got to organize the data, you got to make it work for you. I had Darian Bates on. He just started a new company. And it's all about, organizing that data, but then actioning on that data, being able to execute it against that data. And you had said, like, no one's really doing it right now. Like, even the big name brands that we talk about
Yeah.
doing really innovative things aren't able to tie the whole chain together in even like one way to make that personalized guest experience. I think you had called it, I wrote it down, true contextual personalization.
Yeah. You're right. Like, I think we're flooded with amount of data. We've got so much information. The question is
So
what do you
hard.
do with it? It is hard because there's so much you can do with it.
Yeah.
The question is, what do you do with it and when do you do it? We talked about the contextual, right? What if I have so much information on you as a guest that your experience in the restaurant of the future is all based off those inputs? When you open up your app, you're only served up chicken sandwiches and not a standard generic menu everybody sees.
Yeah.
What if you pull up into, that is a little science fiction, into a drive-thru and the board changes and welcomes you back? And again, you see the same kind of personalized menu.
Yeah.
Right. That's all based on data. The tricks is how do you actually actionable it in the real-time worlds we have with devices on our fingertips and allow folks to actually interact with it in that way. I think that's the key. I can make decisions on the business based off of reporting and metrics. And we have an amazing reporting tech and an amazing team that does that now. The next part is how do we action it for the guest? And I think that's going to be the key. The person or the business that can figure a lot of that out. And there's much bigger businesses with us with obviously much more headwind than I've got in this area that are starting to play with that. I think you're going to start seeing more than norm once this becomes kind of a less of a dependency on the bigger chains to figure it out, but more of when you find the right solution providers that have done this and can leverage some of the technology stacks that are out there where you can kind of mine the data itself in order to get a solution-based architecture put together. We all have APIs. We all have ways to get the data. But again, what are you going to put in between that makes it functional in the world? I think that's going to be the key side of it.
And you use a data mesh. Is that right?
We do.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And we've spent a lot of time and effort building out our entire data stack. We re-architected it from end to end because we realized that's the importance of our business. We want to understand our guests, want to understand our employees, want to understand what we sell, how we sell it, the combinations, the weather, like all these different mediums that come out in order to give us a true picture after the fact, because we're not recording our days every single video recording every day. We got to go back and look at individual things and really rely on the data and make sure the data is clean and accurate in order to make actionable information on the backside of it. I think a lot of folks look at a PMix and they go, I got great reports, but that's only such a small little facet of what needs to actually transpire. I think if you start bringing in the entire 360 picture of what your business looks like, internal and external, you get a better view and make much more reliable decisions on that information. And then more importantly, you make enhancements to your systems that create a frictionless guest environment.
Yeah.
There's no more, it's not omni-channel. That word is dead. It's omnipresent. Like it's always available because everything talks in every single way.
Yeah. Oh, I have to make that change on my website.
Oh, good.
We have omnichannel. We have a lot of omnichannel here. Omnichannel.
It's the same word.
The longer I'm in marketing, the more I'm like, ugh, I don't like marketing words.
Marketing words, exactly.
I don't like marketing words. I just want to use like plain English speak.
Yes.
But it's hard because people relate to certain things.
They do. The buzzwords are the keys, right? The buzzwords come out and they stick in people's heads. But at the same time, if you can't simplify it and explain it, then what's the point of it?
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking back to my conversation with Darian, and he kept talking about, to your point of using AI, not to necessarily replace people, but to make some of these processes work better on the back end.
Correct. I agree.
And how he kept talking about people as being like innate discoverers and explorers. And that each employee in the business needs to have that mindset of discovering the data. That there's not necessarily one group of people right over here that are looking at data, and that everyone's kind of curious about the data and what's coming in and coming up with ideas and not just putting it in a report or dashboard and putting it over there and then making decisions. And I feel like that's what you're talking about. You're talking about making this more in the moment, which, we tend to call it real time, but what is really real time? It's but just being able to make those decisions faster. So it kind of brings me to my next question, which I'm really curious about, which is, how do you manage all this in terms of your cross collaboration with the folks in operations and with the folks in marketing?
Yeah, I think it's easy for us to sit at a corporate office in a top level, right? To look down and say, here's what we know. I think our key to success, it's you take it down to lower levels. Yeah. I think if you look at what we do at a leadership level, we have all the decisions, right? But we're not living in the day-to-day and then at the store level, quite frankly. I think it kind of needs to inverse. We have all the power, but none of all the information. We need to give a lot of the power back to the individual stores and operators, right? Because they have more of the information themselves. They're seeing it real time. That's one of our successes here is we've had a great partnership from the IT standpoint, working with the different franchisees and our operators to get their buy-in and get their input. Because without their buy-in and input, our decisions are basically hypotheses, which aren't always accurate. Right. And so when we go into meetings and we talk about new features in the apps, we talk about new systems in the stores, or we talk about new cross-functional programs, it really is a collaborative effort to understand how does it affect the bottom line, our most important and valuable people, our team members, right? It really has to resonate with them and get their input as well before things go to a larger stake. I have some amazing leaders on my IT team that really drive that all the way home into the stores, whether it be going and looking at a shift, or working a shift, or going and ordering at a restaurant. I think that the cross-functionality also is we realize that we're not experts in those other fields. So we're going to align their expertise in order to help, fundamentally make our changes, and vice versa. We might be the experts in technology, but how we apply it operationally could destroy the restaurant, which we don't want to do, or vice versa to a marketing standpoint. Yeah. I think having good partnerships and peers is going to be key, and it's going to be key. It's also, you talked about culture, the buzzwords, what it is. I think the culture, trumps strategy all the time. Without that, if I can't go to my peers and have those discussions, or I can't go to my employees and walk in and have an open door policy and there's no wrong idea, take a risk. You name the key buzzwords that are out there, then everything is kind of for naught, because the last thing you want to do is make decisions in a glass castle, because eventually the glass is going to break and the castle is going to crumble. Yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine you have strong leadership there. And you also have, I know, a strong franchisee network.
We do.
Any best practices you can share about building a strong franchisee network? How do you keep those communications open and really empower them, like you said?
Look, I think the franchisee community, and I'm speaking specifically about the IT groups that I work with day in and day out, we have 3,000 domestic restaurants and we're 93% franchisees, 7% corporate. So we're going to have those relationships. It's about transparency and humility. Right. And bringing them along in the journey. I think our success, number one here, is that we put our foot forward and say, we want to try this new solution. before you invest, we're going to invest and put them in our company stores. And then we're going to show the results. But I'm going to show not just the winners, I'm going to show the losers as well. Because that adds validity. Like, okay, look, you went and tried this solution. Before you came to us and made us do it and spend all this money in research and marketing and operations, you tried it and it failed. But at least you admitted it failed, or vice versa. You have these discussions with them and you have an open conversation and you get their inputs and you work the solutions together with them. Because as much as I think I know everything, I don't. It's a joke, by the way. I don't. It's good to get their feedback and get their input and get their buy-off and have them be part of the process. That's the winning formula. There's so often you have a franchisee, franchisor relationship that's very,
it's
conflict oriented.
Too often.
Yeah. I think it doesn't need to be there. It doesn't need to be there. It can be collaborative. And I think that's when the key to our success is have open dialogue and transparency, really, as I can't say it any more than that. And it's realizing, again, that you have your wins and your losses and you express them. And with that builds trust, right? Yeah. And with that builds respect. And when you start having those things, you might continue to develop and evolve your platforms in cooperation instead of competition. That's really been, again, one of our big successes, which is why we've been able to roll out so much stuff in the last 2.5 years since I've been here. We've done a lot of radical stuff, which my CEO says it all the time. We've done more in the last 2 years than we've done in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And it's because of that, quite frankly.
Right. Well, and I love the way you're going about it because you're, just the example you gave with AI and doing sort of like this test bake-off, I assume, at your corporate stores.
Yeah. And franchisees.
So
we get them involved too.
You're getting them involved. They're seeing a little sneak peek. They can give you that feedback.
Yeah.
You're also using different tech tools. It makes us better. It makes the tech providers better because it creates almost like a healthy competition, healthy tension, I would think.
It does.
And so the whole system is sort of getting that same level of transparency and improvement and visibility.
Yeah.
And that's, it kind of makes my heart hurt a little bit when I start talking about franchisees because, like I said, I wasn't in this, since I was 16, whatever. I worked at restaurants for quite a while in my youth, but then I spent most of my time in B2B tech companies as a marketer. It was straight B2B. It wasn't hospitality. I come here and obviously it's a massive education, the franchisor system for me. And it took me a while. It took me the better part of the first year to understand all the nuances. And a lot of the brands we work with, because as you know, we just work with QSR and fast casual, are heavily franchised. And it's so often such a contentious relationship. And you think, how did we get here?
Yeah.
Right? Like how did this, and I think there's just so many factors. We won't go into it too far. But there's just so many factors involved with that. But to hear that you're doing this in such a collaborative way is very uplifting. And I'm sure, a great example for other folks listening. Maybe if they want some tips, they can call you. Or you'll be at the shows, you'll be on the network. So, there's something else I want to talk to you about that we also alluded to in our pre-call, which is, what has materialized and stuck in terms of tech and innovations and what hasn't.
Yeah.
And you talked a lot about like preparing for the next moment in time. God willing, it's not another pandemic, but preparing, every industry goes through a reckoning. We've been through a big reckoning. And what is that next moment in time going to look like? And you started reflecting and kind of listing off all these things. And in fact, we did a poll on LinkedIn recently, like things that have stuck and things that really haven't materialized. So where do you see the things that have stuck continuing to stick besides AI? Because we spent a lot of time on that. But what else do you see as being something that you think is going to be around for a while?
Yeah. It's funny. It's a great question. The reason why is because you talk about people were talking about drones. People were talking about autonomous delivery vehicles. We were talking about robotics in kitchen. Those are fads, right? I think that really that's gonna change. This sounds very cliche. Outside of the hospitality, which is the industry we're in, regardless, really it's going to be about the device in your hand, right? These things are going to stick and to continue to evolve. Loyalty and dedication to brand is going to continue to evolve, period. I think the ability for guests, in order to get whatever they want at any given time by leveraging their own device and sharing more information with you, to have that one-to-one relationship. Look, now I sound like a marketer. Really
It's okay.
This is where it's going, right?
Yeah.
The world is changing. Our next generation of people, our young kids are your next influencers, like TikTok, right? Social online games. That whole ecosystem is going to hit us. It's going to hit us square. I mean, look at Mr. Beast. Not a plug for Mr. Beast. My kids follow that gentleman, and he's a big philanthropic individual, right?
Yeah.
But that's where it's going. This is where we're going to go. We have to be in the mediums and the moments that they want. And we need to be able to provide the solution, the technology stacks that communicates with them that way.
Yeah.
Like, think about where TV ads were before COVID and no streaming services. Now we're all streaming services, and the whole marketing paradigm is shift to what you advertise for. Same with technology. I think it goes back to putting more valuable information inside people's hands so they can make more informed decisions and make it a frictionless environment. That's where it's going. Like in the store of the future, you look at me personally, I kind of said this for those of you who sat in the meeting with my last thing was, you walk into the store eventually, I may have said it earlier today as well, everything changes around you. The store knows who you are when you walk in that door. Everything contextually changes around you who you are. Thinking like you have your own social score, like you're a 4 out of 5. The store knows who you are, identifies when you walk in the door. Like all that stuff is digitalized in the next generation. And that's where this is going. 100%.
Do you worry about security? Like, I know that's a big concern when it
I
comes
always
to
worry
data.
about security. 100%. There's no question about it. But the real simple principle, I work with a great gentleman, my head of security here. And, it's always about if somebody's going to trust us with your information, we have a social and ethical responsibility to take care of that. So it's always first and foremost in our minds. So whenever we build any kind of solution, that becomes there, right? So we need to be cognizant of it. We also need to give people the rights to get out of it. If they want to walk away, we have the ability to go and truly expunge them out of the system. So security is always going to be part of the decision matrix as we start evolving as a brand, also as an industry as well. Like all it takes is, one bad incident and the industry has to flip when it comes to data privacy. We've already seen it happen in different states.
Right. And it's really interesting in terms of how it's going to play out with the next generation, right? Like you mentioned your kids.
Yeah.
And there's an expectation of like, they grew up with that phone.
Yeah.
And there's an expectation of the Netflix and the Amazon-like experiences. And yet there are some of them too that are super nervous about people having my data and that kind of thing. And me, I mean, I don't know if it is because I'm a marketer, but I want to be catered to in the most personalized fashion. Like, I don't know about walking into a store and like everything changing, but like, that's like, what?
That's kind of cool.
But I do want to be known. I want a super like customized experience because it just gives me the warm and fuzzies. I'm that kind of person, right?
Yeah.
But I think with that next generation, it's going to be really interesting to see how that all progresses.
I think it will. Like if we'll take, I don't want to use the channel, but whatever you're doing, they're capturing data on you regardless. Whatever you view, whatever you watch, whatever you click on, or whatever you sign up for.
Even if you're on those browsers that like you say, no following me.
Well, we won't name the browsers, but yeah, there's always ways for somebody to track you. If somebody says that there's just this out there, it's just, it's a commonality of, I mean, even your phones track you wherever you go. Then you turn everything off. Some other system's tracking you somewhere when you've seen it in news articles, everything else. I think that generation is probably more critical of data, right? But I think also they want to be more informed, I think is the key word. I think previously we never informed people what we were doing. I think the information is the key. If we tell them, here's why you're giving it to us, here's what we're doing and be upfront about it, I think you can overcross that barrier. You're going to gain that trust initially. I think there's a lot of the naysayers out there saying, ooh, you're kind of deceptive. What are you doing? Like, what's your true initiative here? I think that's kind of where it stems from. Again, I'm not a young child anymore. Wish I was. Different story. I live vicariously through my teenagers.
Same.
But I think over time, as they grow up and mature and they go off to college and they start seeing the value of this and they learn about how personal preferences are, like it changes. I think of like back to banking, right? On a total tangent. We used to walk in and talk to a teller, right? And you just write a check and sign your name. People are like, what the heck's a check? Nowadays, it's all on your phone. And you never talk to people. It's all done automated tellers and so forth. Those decisions were based off of data metrics, right? The people had to trust them to make these evolutionary shifts and paradigm shifts. I think we're in that same kind of evolution in our industry. right? We're going through these massive paradigm shifts that were forced upon us in order to make the experience better. And that's what they've done. They did it for efficiencies. They did it for labor savings. They did it for all the different reasons you would do it, right? We're doing the same thing in a kind of a different context.
Yeah. It's such a good comparison. It's such a good metaphor. Thinking about, I mean, it wouldn't be for people a lot younger than us because they don't remember walking into a bank and having to do a deposit with the tubes and stuff like that. But you're right. Oh my gosh, it's a great comparison.
Yeah, like, do you trust taking a picture of your check in your phone to go to your check? Because they do, right?
Yeah.
And making sure it goes to your bank in post. There has to be that trust factor there all the way through.
Yeah. Okay, my next question comes from one of my colleagues, Tom Dunnigan, who I know you've met.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask it because, and I preface it like that because it just doesn't sound like my kind of question, but I'm going to. He says, what is the cool, gnarly stuff that you're doing on the back end that no one sees? That's such a Tom question.
That sounds like a Phil Crawford question, because if you know me, I'm like in a hoodie and like you see now, and jeans, sometimes flip-flops, so we won't go there. Dress code here, different story. I think I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think a lot of this tool stuff with machine learning in the back end really is going to be kind of the secret sauce of what we're doing. And you touched on it earlier about the capturing of data, what you're going to do with it. Like I can't spill the special sauce, but there's a lot of cool things they're doing with our recent, spin ups of our app and loyalty programs. They're really going to try to play in some of the things I've talked about that might be in the future that we really can kind of hone and really understand our guests and make decisions on it based on product we're doing, based on LTOs. But it's going to be more about the modeling itself and taking away the guessing that sometimes restaurateurs do and have the system spit out the ideas. I mean, I'm going to use the words ChatGPT, you just brought it up earlier. Like, you'd be able to input a question into a system and say, hey, what happens if I added bacon to a cheeseburger in this demographic in this legion of regions, but on a Tuesday with like sunshine and we had a special for $3? Like, what model would that spit out? But it becomes that kind of contextual machine learning, I think, which we're actually partially building it. But I think that people will start eventually seeing as some of the back end stuff we're doing internally, because it takes so much human element to mine that data, but you can actually use a lot of machine learning modeling in order to get the output you need based on algorithms. That's the cool stuff we're doing on the back end. Now, again, it's not sexy. Like,
it's pretty cool.
It's cool, but it's not sexy. It's not like, ooh, look at the new flashy toy you got. Right. It's not there, but it's behind the scenes. The Uber nerds like myself are like, no, that's a flashy, cool thing. Like, we love that stuff.
Yeah.
That's the gnarly stuff we're doing. And I think that if we can expand upon that and we can expand upon our individual internal marketing and tech stacks, I think we'll start to be able to leverage and make changes on the front end in a quicker, more affordable fashion.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think that's really cool because the front end stuff, like, there are too many gadgets and flashy things now.
Yeah. And
you all got them in the pandemic. And now it's about that reckoning of like, wait a minute, how can we make this more efficient? Which is kind of where we started.
Correct.
So we're coming up on time, but I didn't get to ask you about your Star Wars figurines that you wanted to make sure were in the background.
Yes. See, it's like you can take the geek out of the nerd. You can't take the Star Wars out of the nerdy. So yes, a big diehard Star Wars fan, as you can see over my shoulder. You can't see them all. I have walls and walls of Funko Pops and collectibles. And it's so great because I have my teenage son is a big Mandalorian Star Wars fan. So you're passing down that torch of the Lucas Empire of what it is. It kind of keeps you grounded, right? I always tell the teams, they're like, I am who I am. I have a high level of, self-esteem and humility of just be who you are. Right. Because one of my favorite people I follow is Pastor Greg Rochelle, and he's always had some amazing phrases. One of his, people would rather follow somebody that's honest and true to themselves and always right. It's the same thing. Like, be who you are, bring toys, like personalize who you are. And it's also a conversation piece. Like, wow, well, look, you got like a bunch of toys in your office. Do you really work or do you play with toys all day? So that's kind of where it's kind of growing up. And again, it's kind of the technology science fiction side. When I first started with my computer, it was because my mom, right, gave me an Apple II when I was like, yay big, and a Commodore 64 where you might be getting programming on. Like, that's where it started. And so it continues to evolve. And it just is an extra little childish bug in the back of my head that says, you know what, stay to your roots, man. It's cool to be that way. So that's why I have Star Wars toys.
That's so cool. It reminds me of the Michael Singer story. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes.
And he has this, his book's called The Surrender Experiment. And he talks about the first time he ended up building a huge tech company. It was HR, tech. But the first time he was it was like a Radio Shack type store, and he bumped into a computer which fell on the ground. And he's like, "What does this thing do?" This is like 80s, right? He's like, "What does this thing do?" And that's how he started programming.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of cool.
I know. And my team hates it when I sit there, and the rule here is we don't give Phil any admin access because he'll do damage. And I like to tinker with code, on apps and the web stuff we're doing. I like to go in and play because it just keeps me grounded, but it's my passion. I know the software development lifecycle very well. And I like to tinker with the latest and greatest stuff like Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Right. And doing stuff like Dolly and different things on it to start developing, because why not?
Yeah. Listen, if you can put play and work together.
Oh,
it's not.
Look, this isn't work for me. I keep telling them, people why do you do this? I'm like, I love what I do.
Yeah.
If you love what you do, it's not a job. It's not work. Right. It's a passion. So, I could talk for hours, which is why I do podcasts and I have these discussions, because it really is that fire inside. You can kind of, it gets me invigorated to come in every day and I get to go play with computers and technology and bleeding edge stuff and deal with food and beverage. Like, oh my gosh, what is better than that? And I'm probably an antithesis, IT guy. I'm a big extrovert. So it's like, wow, you're feeding all my ADD, OCD, ADHD kind of things
right,
all in this one.
Brain.
All in one time. So it's killer. I love it. 100%.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you're passionate about giving back, and you had a plug early on that you wanted to.
Oh yeah. So I'll be at, so obviously in Burtech coming up.
Yeah.
I get to be a judge once again on Startup Valley, which is awesome.
Nice.
I might squander into a panel or two. You got to come and find and see that yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be at RFIS in a couple of weeks talking about automation with a couple of key panelists. But yeah, giving back. So I recently was kind enough to join Andrew's, gift meal as a board member.
Yeah, I did see that.
And that's just an amazing cause, right? It's about, give a meal, gift a meal to help those less fortunate. You probably saw the wristband on, with Noah Glass and, No Kid Hungry.
Yeah.
And I do Rounded Up America. I started with, Harold Herman and Jennifer Warren back in the Yard House days. Getting back to the society that has given me everything I've got is kind of, part of the mission is to give back in time, right? And giving insight and value to these startups or other groups to grow and continue is how you do so. Yeah. And as much as I can talk about them and, get benefits, 100%, that's what you got to do.
Yeah. I had a chance to meet Andrew about a year ago. I think it was at a show. I think it was at Meg, actually, right before NRA. And I was just thrilled to hear about what he was doing. And
it's taken off too.
I need to have him on here because he did want to. He was interested in coming on and just sort of got distracted. But what a lovely young gentleman he is.
Absolutely, and it's a great idea too, right? And it's a low level lift to get going, just like the other two plugs they gave as well. And it really does benefit when you sit back and you see somebody that gets a check for a local food shelter and what that actually does to feed people, and realize how blessed you are to actually have what you have. And see how much far that money goes. It really is. It gets at you, and that really is what people should really, if they can do so and give back their time and or funds, they should really definitely do so. Makes them not to get all biblical, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Okay, last but not least, coming up on time.
Yeah,
food. We didn't talk about the food yet. Any new fun menu items coming out?
Well, we did, but it was so popular we sold out.
What was it?
So we had a Philly cheesesteak going on. By the time this airs, it's already way long gone at that point. But the problem, though, is that it had such big demand on both the Carl's Jr. and Hardee side. We sold out within 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So
and you're not bringing it back?
No, I think it's going to be one of those that, we won't name the other concepts that do that get shelved, that maybe back that popular band, but it'll come out in the future. But it was a great success. I think it's a great product.
Yeah. And
that was one I missed out on. I mean, I got to test it early, but never got to actually go enjoy it because it was gone so quick.
Oh, wow. Was it in a long roll or was it in a bun?
It was both. So they had a Philly cheesesteak burger, which is like meat on meat, which is, you can't go wrong with that. And then it was for the Hardee's was in a burrito, and it was phenomenal for breakfast. So great product, great, menu engineering, value. And I think the consumers really clamored onto it.
Yeah.
Outside of the, the ads that were done on social and TV, and obviously some of the promotion thing we did, it was a tremendous hit, and we sold out.
Sounds amazing. I mean, I grew up outside of Philly. So when you say Philly cheesesteak, I'm like,
Well, it's funny too, because when we launched it was like the week of Super Bowl. And
who
was in the Super
it?
Bowl. There you go.
Smart.
Right. So obviously taglines and everything else. I think that actually
got
was
some
also
good
the
marketing
catalyst here
people.
too. Yes, we do. They know what they're doing.
Awesome. Well, Phil, any last plugs or announcements you want to give? I would just want to thank you so much for all your time and all your insight. And we know you're an innovator and you're doing really cool stuff. So I'm sure people can follow you on LinkedIn, but any other ways that people can get in touch with you?
Find me on LinkedIn is the best way. Keep an eye out on podcasts such as this. It's just a pleasure to talk to you and talk industry and talk things non-industry, talk Star Wars, talk food. So it's kind of fun, right? It brings a full 360 together. But absolutely, I appreciate your invite and always enjoy talking.
Super appreciate it. Well, thank you again for your time and good luck with all the fun things I know you have planned this year, including your travels and at your events. And I hope to see you somewhere on the road. But if you're not out there on the road, go follow Phil on LinkedIn, send him a note, thank him for being on the show and pick his brain a little bit because he's got lots of ideas.
That works. I like it.
Awesome. All right. You have a great day. Thanks again.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you for checking out this episode of Restaurants Reinvented. This show is brought to you by Q, a restaurant tech company paving a brighter future for operators with the industry's first unified commerce platform. If you enjoyed what you learned in this episode, make sure to follow Restaurants Reinvented in your favorite podcast app or visit qbeyond.com, that's QUBEYOND.com /podcast to find all of your latest episodes.